Right. So to get started, to give some context of why you've been allowed to sit on the stage.
Yeah, of course.
Who are you? What is your background?
So Daniel Remedios, as you introduced me, founder and CEO of Revecue. It's a new AI technology. It's focused very much on go-to-market teams and businesses, but it's really focused around solving some big problems that we see in the market right now. My background previously was leading product and strategy for another SaaS company called Ebster. Some of you may be familiar with it. We very much focus on building SaaS for sales and marketing teams. So we started with productivity tools, we evolved into data tools, and over the last 10, 15 years, I had the opportunity as we developed the product for thousands of customers to then get access to data and insights into how businesses were actually performing. And it's not so much the superficial top-level KPIs that you may typically get, such as win rate, sales cycles, and deal values, but I started to study the underlying factors that were actually influencing the performance of a business and how they can be seen as signals to drive efficient and profitable growth at scale.
Okay, I'm going to cut in before we go to monologue territory. But
Can't help myself.
I've got two questions.
Ticking down.
Yeah. I've got two questions immediately off the back of that, based on your background. Okay, so you talked about Revecue being an AI platform in the GTM space.
Yep.
How is that? So every SaaS company at the moment is now an AI platform, doing something with AI. Some of it's useful, some of it is just because they felt like it was a cost of entry now as part of a SaaS tool. How is Revecue using it differently?
Well, I think we have to take a step back, right? We're living in a territory where the growth at all costs model has clearly failed for all of us. And what we have seen is that businesses have been investing more and more and more in leads and more technology and having more people. And what I've been able to see, as I say, through the data is that as these companies have started to scale, they've started to lose that efficiency. Win rates are dropping, sales rates are dropping, or sales cycles are getting longer, deal values are dropping. And what we see in this space right now is businesses are trying to stay relevant. The technology that businesses have been utilizing in the sales and marketing space are now pretty much jumping on this AI bandwagon, is what we're seeing. And I don't think any of us want AI-generated emails at scale. You know, it doesn't really move the needle. It's not impacting anything. I don't think we necessarily want AI-produced content at scale. But we have it. And it's new features being added into the sort of more equals more equation. The principle of Revecue, or at least let's put aside Revecue, but the problem we're trying to solve is that the power of AI is that it can unlock insight and distribute insight where it's contextually relevant. And if you can unlock that, it's a superpower. And what we are very much focused on when you look at AI is, having seen the data and these different factors that influence revenue, how can we start to understand those? How can we start to look at the different type of factors that really move the needle? But how can they now signal which types of accounts we should be focusing on? When, why? What's the relevance of our engagement? And how can we then understand those factors and signals to then enable better customer experiences? And so from our perspective, AI isn't about productivity here. It's about distributed insight. That's what we're focused on. And so if we can unlock it, if we can make it contextually relevant to the business, and then if we can overlay that on top of the business operation to signal where you need to be focusing at any moment in time. That to us is the big unlock, and that's the focus we have.
Okay, so over the last 10 years, thousands of companies, trillions of dollars worth of deals in insight.
Yeah.
If you were to look at the high performance businesses, so the ones that are doing well, what is the keystone that you see across those businesses?
I think the realization for me was I sat down tail end of last year, and as you alluded to, I'm in a unique position because I have got access to thousands of companies' data around like what's driving success, and actually the number one problem they're facing is the ability to scale and efficiently scale. And when you see that curve, you can see companies investing more and more and more in trying to grow revenue. We talked about for marketing, technology, people, and the quotas are still going up, but that revenue line is just not keeping up with itself, and that gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Put more bums on seats though, right?
Yeah, we could try that. But the top companies that really set themselves apart, the ones which are consistently driving revenue, where the ratio is increasing as they're investing more, are the ones which have data and insight at the heart of what they do. We have been talking for many years about the importance of data, but now the keystone is the insight that comes from that data. So when I look at the top performing businesses, and I look at the CROs or VPs of revenue operations that are building really an operation that is consistently delivering results, they start their conversation point with data. There are no opinions.
So from all of that insight, what are the top 3 most common things that you would find are broken in a GTM process?
I think at the moment, what we've got is firstly, a lack of understanding around, I would say, the product market fit and the go-to-market fit. It's surprising, the simplicity of the problem, but I think what happens is businesses have a perception that we've got a solution, it's right for this market, let's just keep going. And they set and forget, and they lose perspective with the customer as to what problem are they solving? And how is that problem evolving and changing? How are we uniquely solving it? And what's our business model to support it? And are our go-to-market efforts aligned with how we're actually winning that business consistently? Is it high value, low touch, or is it actually low touch, high value? And are our unit economics supporting all of that? If you don't have that core understanding, Joe alluded to it before around like positioning and how you focus your solution for the customer. That's one piece. But the problem that we see beyond that point is we're not evolving with the customer, we're not understanding their needs and requirements, and that just gets lost. And then when you start scaling from that point, you get misalignment. The second problem that you've got is there's no consistent understanding in that customer journey. So what are the moments that matter? Right? I think, again, Joe laid it out very nicely in terms of that funnel that we can all identify with. But all those pinch points, what are the signals in which we need to engage with a customer, and what's the context in which we can give them a positive, engaging experience? And again, that's lost because there is no uniform understanding as to what that needs to look like.
So you touched on growth at all costs before. I'm not sure how many people kind of who understands when I say growth at all costs. Who's familiar with what we're talking about? Okay, only a handful. So all right, riff for a little bit on growth at all costs, and then my follow-up question for that is how did we end up at the point where growth at all costs became the norm for a lot of sales organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So growth at all costs is really a phenomena that started to build from, I would say, the mid-2010s. And it's a phenomena that was really focused around businesses investing a disproportionate amount of money in driving revenue. The cash burn was through the roof. These are unsustainable business models. Now, we all have guidelines in terms of how much it costs us to actually acquire a customer and sustain a customer, but businesses are underwater. They're starting to spend, if you look at a lot of the industry data at the moment, the cost of actually acquiring a customer has increased tenfold in the last 3 years alone. And that's because businesses in pursuit of growth have been over-investing in just buy more leads, just buy more technology, right? Just put more people in there, right? And they're not, as I alluded to before, if you're spending money aggressively, that's fine if you can sustain it. But it is unsustainable. And that, when you look at behaviors, you have to look at the incentives. And it was through a period where we believed that technology was transforming customer experiences. And when everything went remote with COVID, that was then another spike around technology. But the interest rates bottomed out. They were at 0. And those interest rates have increased 50 times over the last few years, as we all know only too well. But I would sit down with VCs on the West Coast of America to talk through their portfolio and how their companies are performing. And the feedback that I would get from these VCs was alarming. And in hindsight, it's very clear. It almost feels like the bubble that built up around the housing crisis up to 2008. Everything's fine until it's not fine. And these VCs were going, we're happy to invest in businesses at 20, 30, 40 times revenue. We had businesses valued at hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars when they were only generating tens of millions of dollars. And the operators within these businesses believe that I can spend $20 to win $1 because if we keep growing as we are, I'll raise again at a similar valuation. And that's where the whole thing really left us in a position where we were spending disproportionate amounts of capital in pursuit of growth. Because the one thing that the VCs, as the drivers of this market, were demanding was revenue growth. And they would value your business with a combination of 2 factors. How much revenue do you have and what's your year-on-year growth? It doesn't matter how much it costs for you to get that because we will allocate more capital to you. And that's where everyone was exposed because I think it's a Warren Buffett quote maybe, but you only see who's been swimming naked when the tide comes out. And that's where we are now. I would speak, as I say, to the VCs going, this isn't sustainable. If you are expected to invest millions and millions each month in supporting this business in pursuit of growth, and you have to spend $20 to get $1 in, this whole thing can come crashing down quite quickly. And all they were focused on at the time was the fact that somebody else has raised an even bigger valuation. So they're all excited, high-fiving each other because the value of their portfolios increased because now everything's valued at 30 times. And again, the behaviors come from the incentives here. And what we've seen with growth at all costs is that money was cheap. It was invested in high growth opportunities. The VCs assumed that it would continue to keep coming. They pushed these operators in technology companies thinking you can scale infinitely, just go and get the market. All we care about is the revenue and growth. And once you show the uptick, we'll give you more money. And then with interest rates spiking and the market starting to recalibrate, those businesses were exposed because all of a sudden they go, we're not going to give you that money. And your multiples have dropped in terms of valuation. You were valued at 20, 30 times. Now we value at 5 or 6 times in line with the market. And these businesses were running on the expectation they could sustain a run rate of 12 to 18 months by burning $5 million a month, $10 million a month. It was crazy. Now there's no more money coming, they're having to recalibrate quickly, and they're in a state of crisis now because in pursuit of growth, where they're just throwing more about inputs on the expectation of outputs, they don't know the correlation now. They don't know the relationship, the through flow between what's happening with this input and how's it directly associated to output. And the meetings that I'm having more frequently now are commercial leaders in distress.
You started talking about interest rates. It feels like that's the time you should bring out a head of finance to kind of go in on that a little bit.
And Mr. Accounting Man hidden behind the site.
We have a member of the team who's refusing to come past the okay, so you're talking. So Revecue is amazing.
Yep.
But I'm gonna block you from going into sales pitch mode yet.
Yeah. Okay.
You've talked about the problem.
Yep.
And the why, how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the fix? Like how do the companies who have gone down that path of growth at all costs, how do they reverse that trend? Mm-hmm. And for companies who are still building into that, what are the pitfalls they should be avoiding?
I think right now, to fix the issue, and I think it's a widespread issue, I would happen to think that many of us in this room are probably in a similar position, knowingly or unknowingly, of an unsustainable revenue operation. We have to recalibrate quickly. Time is against us. But to achieve that successfully, the best performing businesses are leaning on data. And this isn't about data that is mere forms of, how much activity have we done and what are the conversion rates and all that sort of thing at top level. We need to go a lot more granular. And so what we've very much focused on in terms of engaging with these businesses is run a revenue diagnostic. Right, over the last 3 years, you'll start to see that you're working harder to generate revenue. This isn't necessarily top of funnel, cost of acquisition, bring the leads in per se, but actually your win rates are dropping, your sales cycles are getting longer, your deal values are probably stalled if they're not otherwise decreasing. And we have to understand where the success lies in this business. And the key factors from our perspective are which types of businesses you're engaging with. Right? When we sit down with a company and we look at the ICP, not all things are equal. Right? A lot of people treat ICP as an opinion piece. And as I say, they set it once and they forget about it for a period of time. That should be intertwined in every single decision that you make. Where are we going to win in the market? Where are the pockets for us to succeed? This isn't just top line, what's the size of the industry, what's the size of the company. You want more granular details if you can obtain them as well. Is there a significance around a company that is perhaps operating in multiple locations and therefore may have concerns around taking payments across multiple currencies if you're a fintech provider, for example? Or they've just taken on a round of investment and therefore you can anticipate they'll be investing here, here and here. They've expanded into a new market, they've got new capabilities. These sorts of things are what you need to know. And when we're looking at businesses, you can identify immediately that you're 3, 4, 5, even 10 times more effective at generating pipeline, converting it on these concentrated markets. And if you can connect that to then your customer base in terms of your then ongoing retention expansion, it's a huge unlock. As you progress through, who are we engaging with? The personas, right? But then if you can bring into that the conversations that you're having, it's like magic in terms of understanding what are our customers talking about, what are their pains, what are their challenges, what are their objections at the moment, what are their concerns. You can obtain so much of that data by looking at the conversations that you have. With the breakthrough in technology that we're now seeing, more and more calls are being recorded, more of those calls have transcripts available, and with the capabilities of things like generative AI and actually feeding those into models, you can now start to see a correlation. So I can now go, these types of businesses, under these circumstances, this type of person, we can look at intent data. So we've got first-party intent data. That might be your website, traditionally, and how they're engaging on specific types of content or some of the channels that you own, like email. But you've also got product usage. People's behavior is a key indicator. And if you can start to understand actually how they're behaving at different stages of the customer life cycle, and when that leads to a positive signal or not, again, you can start to focus that more effectively in terms of we need to prioritize those, we don't need to prioritize those. And then you can look at your sales team. So you can start to understand actually when we now bring in the right types of opportunities and the level of intent is right, we're not chasing hundreds and hundreds of accounts at any moment in time. We're cherry picking the ones that really matter now. But then we've got the context as to what's going on to route them through to the right salesperson, and then have the salesperson manage the sales process succinctly in a consistent manner, where you can qualify more effectively. You can run discovery and get under the skin of the needs and requirements for that persona, but you can start to understand how that correlates with previous success that you've had.
And if only there was a tool out there that could do that. What is it that Revecue does?
So, Revecue principally is, we talk about it being an AI platform for go-to-market teams, but the principle of Revecue is we want to unlock the insight that's driving revenue across your organization. Not only do we want to unlock that insight, we want to be distributing that insight where and where it's required. As I talked about before, the problem that I felt and experienced firsthand, both personally with some of the biggest and hardest days that I've ever had in terms of having to, at times recalibrate EBSTA and remove people at points, all the way through to what's going on with our customers right now is we're stuck. We don't have the insight to make decisions. So for Revecue at the moment, we're very much focused on let's plug directly into your RevTech. Let's identify instantaneously all of the different factors that are influencing your revenue, and let's overlay that on where we are now. Off the back of that, when you have that context into what's driving success, things get very, very exciting, in my humble opinion. Very sad and geeky way, but you've got then the capabilities to, now we've got the data, now we've got the insight, let's now distribute that insight. So we can start to build scoring models and build it into systems that people are using, like the CRM. We can start to signal that these are the right types of accounts you should be prioritizing now, not thousands of accounts that are otherwise readily available. We've got deals where now you can start to go, what's the health and status of the deal? What are the positive factors? What are the additional things that I need to be considering? And that extends into customer success and retaining, expanding customers. But the real aha moment for us now in terms of helping businesses consistently perform is you're guiding people through the right decisions that need to be made. You're not cherry picking data that can be isolated for the C-suite in Ivory Tower to go what's happening here, here and here. It's about empowering everyone in the go-to-market team, sales, marketing and success. How are we aligned? What are we focusing on? How do we engage with the customer? And if we can signal where to focus, that's one amazing piece. But the breakthrough that we've achieved more recently is because we understand the performance of a business, an individual business, and we can benchmark it against others in market, we can then understand the different factors that need to be considered to then guide people through their everyday. We can start to build real-time notifications, we can do daily summaries, we can do one-on-one reviews that you can have in terms of pipeline review, what do we need to look at, what deals do we need to prioritize. And we've started to bring in third-party knowledge. I think that's one of the big unlocks at the moment. We talk about inconsistent performance, knowledge and insight, but how can I be more effective? I had a list of 1,000 accounts I had to gradually work through at a moment in time. Now I've got 10 accounts that I need to engage with and understanding as to why. But now I've got context as to what's happening. We can combine that with best-in-class sales methodologies and start to coach and the rep around what they need to be discussing with the prospect, what they need to be picking up on, what sorts of questions they need to ask through the sales process, and we can then learn and iterate that from the conversations that are being had to then continue that sales process all the way through.
So there's a few of my team members out there who this will probably put their heart in their mouth, me asking, and be gentle. Yeah. We recently plugged Revecue in to our CRM, our processes. What were some of the key insights and takeaways. So we are a relatively small sales team.
Yep.
So we are multi-regional. There are kind of 8 of us in the go-to-market org, including marketers, maybe 10 actually.
Yep.
What were some of the key insights and things that you would hone in on and focus on for us to be a more effective sales organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Six and Flow have evidently achieved one of the key unlocks for success, which is you have an established growth model. Six and Flow are, an agency that have an exceptional reputation around supporting customers on their journey with HubSpot and some of the other leading technology providers out there. And what we were able to see is that it was consistently delivering results. So we had one growth model. That growth model was Six and Flow can consistently generate revenue in an affordable manner with companies that were referred through from HubSpot that your sales team were able to then drive through to close. The problem Six and Flow experienced is that as you started to invest more and grow the team, the results started to plateau. You weren't getting the consistency that you expected. The expectation that you can set a quota and merely just multiply it based on the number of heads and expect the same result just wasn't there. We know that. Yep. And your team were well aware of that, but why? And what we started to see is that Six and Flow were hugely dependent on one channel, but they hadn't necessarily thought through how we can actually start to break down our go-to-market and adapt our services and our entire sales and marketing approach to different types of companies. And so Six and Flow, pretty much in line with where we've seen HubSpot, have started to expand into bigger and bigger types of customers that you're supporting right now. But it's costing you the same amount of time, effort, and energy to close those deals. And Six and Flow had not necessarily focused on how can we route those through to the right types of service offerings. Where should we be focusing? So one of the big step changes that we started to introduce for you guys is what are the types of services that we can now package and bundle up for certain types of customers? How can we signal that based on where you've previously had success selling those services to those types of customers? And when they come in, can we now route them through to the most appropriate rep? And then when the reps are engaging with them, how can we track the activity and engagement to ensure that it's optimal and you're not allowing things to inadvertently stall? So it suddenly became a world in which you were utilizing the CRM almost as a representation of what is, and now it's actually a primary driver of workflow and decision making, because you're now looking at the deals that come in, you're triaging and allocating them to the right resource based on the identity of the business, and then you're now starting to proactively manage those deals more effectively, which is already starting to see the average deal values you're getting from accounts increase, the win rates increase, but also those sales cycles are starting to decrease.
Out of all of my sales reps, who's your favorite?
Oh. Next question.
Right, I'm acutely aware we came out here and said we were going to try and engage the staff, and it's
absolutely.
Me asking you a couple of questions, and
you
go for it. Has anybody got any questions on anything that we've talked about so far? Revecue, Six and Flow, GTM, growth at all costs. There is I can't quite see.
There is a hand somewhere.
There's a microphone.
Yeah, so, a couple of questions then. So what stage are you at? Is it, early stage business, sort of like mapping out market, or have you got, what sort of size are you in terms of revenue? Yeah, okay.
He also has the support of a very good agency, just by the way.
Yeah. Okay, first I've heard of it.
Thanks for that, mate.
So the question in terms of like mapping market and understanding where you need to be focusing, it's a bit like the Wild West at times, to be honest with you. I think when you look at how we've all been hardwired, we will look to quickly establish a TAM of all types of businesses that we can potentially support, and therefore you do the multiples and how much revenue, and look how big our market potential is, and we know that's a falsehood. We also know, truthfully, that the dependency that we have on the data that comes from third-party data providers is incorrect at this moment in time. They're not giving you the value and insights. It's very generic. It's publicly available data that's scraped. That's if it's even accurate, to be honest with you. But what we're able to do with AI now is think about the unstructured data that you need access to. And this is a beginning in my view of a brave new world where these third-party data providers will be challenged, because what we're starting to build out here, for example, with your particular use case, is we can build agents which have specific functions. They're able to firstly analyze your business. They're able to analyze the types of customers that you have. They're able to understand those customers, the domains, and go off publicly and start to look at all manner of different factors beyond what we assume. They take it all. And they start to go, what's the correlation here? What influence do these different factors have on revenue? And are there any additional signals or timing indicators that could help us prioritize the market more effectively? And by conducting those sorts of exercises, we are moving from a world of I can put in a few assumptions on the type of business I could go after, and then let's just spray and pray. And we've got a pretty generic Google slide somewhere with a persona and some of their problems and challenges and stuff like that, to a whole different world where we can look at factors, we can analyze websites, we can scrape job boards, we can look at all manner of different things to go, what are the hidden factors that are influencing this market? And we can start to then recommend and identify accounts that you should be focusing on. And that is a two-sided piece. You've got the accounts that you currently know and understand because you have their information in some format. Ideally, you're then leveraging something like intent data, first-party intent, more so than anything else, to then help prioritize it. But we can also start to signal, these are the net new accounts that we found out in market. And we can do that at scale and far more efficiently and far more effectively, woven in an understanding of how this has driven revenue previously, to then map your market far more effectively. So that's probably, I hope goes some way to answering your question there, unless you've got a follow-up question. But that's the approach, that's the philosophy that I would have, and I think that's the exciting thing that having insights around data and performance gives us to guide us towards more effective decisions and planning, but also to get more relevant insights automatically rather than depending on these third-party data tools that give us useless data. From my perspective, it's a nuanced response, it's a nuanced answer that we probably need to maybe dig into in a bit more detail. But when we're looking at the data that we're obtaining on customers, I think we want to understand far more about them than, or companies than we've ever had before. And the ability to actually look for data beyond, as I say, that general categorization, but actually the circumstances that are affecting that business and the different data sources that can feed into that do provide some profound, outstanding insights. We can get, with public data, we can understand the revenue, we can understand the performance of those organizations. We can also start to understand the hiring and the drivers behind hiring and what they're doing that, particularly for. We can start to understand, actually, they're expanding into specific regions. You've got also public available information that's almost being readily shared that isn't also being tapped into. The executives of these businesses are probably, that you want to target, are probably out trying to target customers themselves and showing more about their stories. And one of the really interesting things is to look at podcasts, look at people talking publicly about.
Right, we've only got 2 minutes and 54 seconds left. I'm trying to run a tight ship, so I'm going to cut you off there because we do have another question over here.
Sorry.
No, perfect. You are more than welcome to pick his brains, but be warned, you will be stuck with him for a while. And I mean that with respect.
Yeah, so hello. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, to be honest with you, B2C is probably a step outside of my immediate sphere of influence. I'm very conscious of focusing on what I know particularly well, which is B2B. But I think B2C is certainly harder to necessarily, on the face of it, grapple with. But I think some of the interesting things that I've started to look at and study, because there is obviously a lot of association between B2B and B2C and things that you can learn back and forth, is some of the AI models are actually obtaining insights from people's social profiles. They're starting to do modeling where they can understand based on what you're following on Instagram or what you're sharing on Instagram or other social profiles, to go, this is the type of person that this is the type of person that we think this individual sits into in terms of a category. They've got these sorts of primary drivers, and they like to be spoken to in specific ways. They've got these like emotional pulls, and so when you're able to break down almost the psychology behind these individuals based on what they're sharing online, the types of recommendations you can get in terms of the content that you can then bring into that and start engaging with people in a more relevant way, and a way that I can associate to, is incredibly exciting. It's not something that's so easy to translate through to B2B, because the buying process and how brands engage is a bit more rational, and you have to try and reason things somewhat. But in the B2C space, a lot of it is about emotional and like the emotional connection to things. And so the ability to actually analyze people and start making recommendations based on how they like to interact and what we can infer from that is probably where I would look first and foremost.
And that's perfectly at time. I'm going to give you an extra 30 seconds quickly. If anybody wants to connect with you about Revecue or just chat shit about GTM for a bit, how can they connect with you?
So I'll be loitering, no doubt, round here. So you can obviously grab me at any point. More than happy to have a conversation. Simply LinkedIn, Daniel Remedios, if you want to connect. I'm more than happy to have different conversations. If you're local, I'm going back and forth between Manchester more and more frequently now. Otherwise, I'm based in London.
And Revecue.com?
And otherwise, if you want to find out a little bit more about Revecue, it's revecue.com.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. So next up, I think we have the CS panel coming out. So they give us a couple of minutes. We're just going to reorganize the stage, and then they'll be right out.
Yeah. Yes. Your favorite person?
I didn't enough for 40-minute time start.
Yes, you did.
Enjoy it. That was